welcome back. And for those of you who are new to the channel, I am here. This is a place where we come together to create interesting stories. So if you enjoy good storytelling, then consider subscribing so that you will always know when we have a new release. Also, if you would like to support the channel directly, then consider becoming a patron, where you can give your input on what kind of stories we create. Without further ado, let us begin today's Inkheart. Maggie Fulchart never knew her father? Well, not really. See, her dad was famous for his fantasy novels, but he disappeared shortly after her birth. She only had a few scant memories of him from when she was a baby. But he was still very much present in her life, mostly through his books. Maggie grew up on his tales of magic and adventure. It felt as though her father was telling her these stories directly, even though she had no memory of him actually reading them to her. She spent most of her time with her head stuck in one of her father's many books, escaping into fantastical worlds and meeting courageous heroes and fire-breathing dragons. Magic and adventure were all well and good, but they didn't pay the bills. So while she loved reading these stories to herself, she kept her passion for them hidden. She did not want to be seen reading a silly fantasy novel. When she turned 16, her mother took her to visit the attic of their home for the first time since she could remember. It was filled with boxes and trunks and old furniture. "Do you recognize this?" her mom asked. Maggie looked over and saw an ornate trunk in the corner. She walked over and opened it. Inside was a worn leather-bound book. As she pulled it out, a gust of wind suddenly swept through the room, ruffling her hair and closing the window. She must have left the window open, she thought. As she blew away the dust, she noticed that the book was missing its cover. She opened it and began reading. "In days gone by," she read, "there lived a great author who penned tales of magic and adventure." As she continued reading, the words seemed to shimmer and writhe like living things. And then the unthinkable happened. The hero of the story stepped out of the book and stood before her. He blinked at her in surprise and then smiled sheepishly. "Hello," he said. "You must be Maggie Fulchart." He introduced himself as Dustfinger, the hero of her father's unfinished manuscript, and he wasn't the only one who had emerged from the book. Characters from her father's other stories were walking around the attic, talking amongst themselves. A fire-breathing dragon peeked its head around a corner. Several other adventurers, a princess, and even a villain followed close behind. They were all looking for their author, Dustfinger told her, because they had been ripped away from their story and thrown into reality without any way to get back home. Only their author could do that, but unfortunately, he had disappeared a long time ago. Maggie couldn't believe this. Her father had written more than 20 books. How could she not have known? She quickly finished the chapter, hoping that doing so would send them back to their own world, but they didn't budge. Then she had an idea. She found an old typewriter on a table and began typing out the next part of the story. The villain from one of her father's books sneered at her. "Why are you doing that? That won't bring him back." "It's worth a shot," Maggie replied. She typed out a scene where Dustfinger and the other hero finally defeated the villain. As she wrote, the villain trembled and vanished. A moment later, Dustfinger and the rest of the characters also disappeared. Maggie was exhausted and thirsty from writing, so she went downstairs to get some water. But when she returned, the book was lying open on the floor, and the characters were all back. They were all staring at the book with pleading looks on their faces. Maggie cautiously approached the book and hesitantly touched it. Suddenly, she heard a voice inside her head. "Finish my story," it said. "I want to see how it ends." She screamed and jumped back, knocking over a chair. Was the voice her father's? But if it was, then why hadn't he finished the story himself? The answer, she realized, was right in front of her. The voice belonged to the villain from her father's book. He had somehow possessed the manuscript and was now trying to force her to write the ending of the story so that he could escape into reality. "Don't listen to him," Dustfinger said, stepping in front of her. "We need to destroy this book. If we don't, he'll just find another author to finish his story, and it could be someone far less capable than Maggie." The princess nodded. "If we destroy the book, then the spell will be broken and we can return home." Maggie wasn't so sure. The villain was right. She'd always wanted to know how her father's stories ended. But then again, she didn't want to unleash another dangerous villain upon the world. Could she really trust herself to write a story as epic as her father's? A gruff voice interrupted her thoughts. What are you fools prattling about? Of course she can write the story. In fact, that's exactly what she's going to do. Maggie and the others turned around and saw a cloaked figure standing in the doorway. As he stepped into the light, Maggie gasped. It was her father. How had he gotten back? Why hadn't he finished his story in the first place? The man sighed and ran a hand through his messy hair. I never finished the story because I was afraid, he admitted. Afraid? Afraid of what? Maggie asked. Of leaving my world, he replied. This world is my story. I poured everything into it. But your mother showed me that there is more to life than writing. And so I stopped writing and started living. But what about our world? Dustfinger asked. Are you just going to leave us trapped here forever? No, of course not. Her father looked at Maggie. I need your help. He explained that the only way to save both worlds was for her to finish his story, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed his help. He led her back to the attic and handed her the book. Together, they worked on the story, her father providing advice and guidance, and her writing furiously. As the sun set, they reached the final page. Maggie wrote the last line and then reread the entire book out loud. The story culminated in an epic battle between good and evil, with good ultimately prevailing. As she read, the characters came to life, leaping from the pages and filling the attic with their presence. When she finished, they all stared at her expectantly. Maggie took a deep breath and closed the book. What happens now? She whispered. The characters all looked at each other, unsure of what to do next. I guess we wait for our author to continue the story, the princess suggested. Oh, brother, I'm so bored, the young dragon whined, stomping his foot. He took off, flying around the attic in circles. The characters all groaned and watched as the dragon accidentally knocked over a shelf, sending books and old toys tumbling to the ground. Perhaps we should help them, Maggie suggested. Her father squeezed her shoulder. That's a wonderful idea, Maggie, but they must learn to live their own lives. We can't help them now. It's up to them to find their own adventures. With that, he turned to leave. Wait, Maggie called after him. You said I could do anything. You said I could ask you any question. I did say that. Her father turned back to face her. Yes, you even promised that I would get a pet dragon, and I'll honor that promise. We'll take care of everything. You just leave it to us. As they descended the stairs, Maggie couldn't help but smile. Writing this story had been difficult, but it had also been fun. Maybe she could find a way to make a living writing stories. She could even ask her father to help her get published. Just imagine, she thought, the daughter of a famous author makes her own fantasy series. Then again, maybe she would rather just live her own story. So, what did you think of the story? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed it, then please hit the like button. It helps us a lot. Until next time, keep creating interesting stories.